As a overhyped, I would say digital twin. I attended one of the sessions back in 2012 or 2013. And that's why they started talking about digital twin. And I look at technology trend, and they were saying within 5 to 10 years, it will be, overtaking BIM. It never happened. So there are still talks going on about digital twin, but in reality, it may have worked in the manufacturing space. But I'm unsure if there are big success in architectural or in a building operating environment, how successful they are. I haven't seen personally as a best use cases. So still there are works going on, but I think it didn't deliver what they're supposed to deliver in 5 to 11 years of time, which is over now, 15 years now. If I look at something which was not a big thing, we have talked in the past, but it slowly progressed. What is that? It's the common data environment. So there was lesser talks going on about CDE, but gradually it's now becoming the cultural shift in how we work.
Hi, just a quick one. If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. It really helps us share practical knowledge with more people. And if you want deeper insight, you can also subscribe to our newsletter at digitalconstructionpodcast.com. All right, let's jump in. Hi, Dhanjeet. Welcome to the Digital Construction Podcast.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you. And thanks for inviting me on the podcast. It's my privilege to be a podcaster. Thank you.
Today we speak with Dhanjeet Sah. He's the studio BIM manager at FK Architects, which is an Australian firm that has built great projects. Particularly a famous one is the Eureka Tower. But today I'm very excited to speak with Dhanjeet because when I met him during one of a recent conference in Sydney, I had the opportunity to see how deep is his knowledge, and he has been involved in this industry for a long time, over 27 years. So he has been able to see the transition from CAD to BIM. And now then he's seen the transition from BIM to digital engineering, and now it's exciting again because we're trying to figure out what's going on with AI. So in the meantime, he has been an instructor. He has been testing different products for Autodesk. So he has really seen the evolution of the industry over a period of time. He has worked in 4 different countries, so he has really seen all of the different cycles. And I think from the different cycles, people like Dhanjeet have the opportunity to learn a lot and try to bring this level of abstraction into what's actually happening today. So hopefully he will help us decrypt what's going on and what happened in the past. But before we start, Dhanjeet, I usually start with the usual question because I think it's an opportunity for everybody to share knowledge around career advice. And what is the best piece of career advice you have ever received?
There are multiples, but I will take top three. The first advice I learned from one of my ex-boss, and his motto was, make me better to serve you better. Having said that, the people can teach you or give you the correct problem, and then you work it out, or they can teach you and then you can serve better. So you can serve better around you. And being as a BIM manager in that company, I realized there's a value, and that's where I started learning more. And then I felt like that's how you can serve better on your community. The second piece of advice was shut up, listen, and respond. So when I say shut up, I'm talking about the thoughts, not really just by closing mouth, but it's like thoughts. Shut up, listen, and then respond. So I think I used to react more than responding, and that's where I started changing being conscious about that, and that's basically changed my behavioral pattern, as well as it helps me professionally becoming a better person as well as a BIM manager. The third one is about understanding the timing, like to keeping your value of your time spent on something. So because we understand we are spending or we are giving a lifetime to someone, so that has to have a particular value. So if I'm spending, let's say, half an hour, that should have a value. So yeah, this piece of advice helped me a lot in terms of personally as well as professionally.
Yeah, that's great. And thinking about your career, I mentioned that you worked in this industry for longer than 27 years. So when you started working in CAD in the late 1990s, what the work? Can you share with us what the workflow looked like day to day at that time, and how are you using the lessons from those days to then think about BIM today?
Yeah, that's a very interesting journey for me. I was I was still in college where I was learning architecture, studying architecture, and then the computer was coming up. There was like computer boom is coming up, and everybody's looking at what sort of technology we should be using it, and I have no idea about anything about the software or computers. So I asked one of the professor, and he said AutoCAD, but I heard AutoCAD. I'm like, what's it gonna do? So I started searching. Of course, there was an internet, but we didn't have much access. I mean, personally, I didn't have an access. So you're just looking at the peers, and then one day I got chance to speak with one of the person in IT, and he advised me to go for CAD. So I searched a place where I can learn AutoCAD, and that's where my journey begins. And just after completion of my course, I got a job as an architectural assistant in one of the architectural firm who were using AutoCAD, but there was no one using AutoCAD. So I was the first person. I started using AutoCAD, and I drafted a one flow plate, and that was done within a couple of hours, and they were amazed to see the results. And I still remember I printed that in dot matrix printer, which took like solid 20 minutes to print a flow plate. Not 20, I think, exaggerating, maybe 5 to 10. So yeah, so early days was very like people had some ideas how to do it, but it wasn't in the practice. I'm talking in terms of Nepal. And there was big firms, they were using AutoCAD, but the small firms were not using AutoCAD at all. So there was some training provider. So I joined a training provider where I started training people in Nepal. So I've trained more than few hundreds of people in Nepal, and I got opportunity to work in Dubai. So after moving to Dubai, I joined a Autodesk training center where I started training people on AutoCAD, 3ds Max, and architectural desktop. These were the three pieces of software, and I could see in Dubai, most of the architectural companies, they were using AutoCAD, and Revit was not in the picture. Whereas when I moved to Singapore, that's where I picked up Revit. So that's where the BIM started evolving, and I can see a good transition from 2D to 3D environment. People started using architectural desktop or Revit, and that's where the BIM evolved. And back in 2008, I moved to Australia. And the main reason for moving to Australia was definitely was a BIM platform, because I had an expertise and I have a skill set. So I got a work offer from from Australian company, and I moved to Australia. So I was amazed to see Australia has almost like a lot of architectural practice were already using Revit, and they were in really. I can see there's lots of demand in Revit, and that's where I can see that it started evolving from BIM, and as we know right now, it's more than BIM in this space.
Yeah, that's great. And are there any, like sometimes like the way people used to work in CAD versus the way people work in BIM, and sometimes it's a little bit different. Like I remember back in the days, people working in CAD, maybe they were very precise, and maybe they used to pay a lot more attention to details. But maybe that's just my impression, because BIM has made things a little bit easier. But are there any habits or principles that you've learned from your early day in CAD, from the CAD era, that you still rely on today when you try to deliver a project with BIM or digital engineering?
Well, in terms of the design principles, they're still the same. Yeah, the design principles, whatever the technology we're going to use, the design principle remains the same. So, for example, even if I'm starting a project in AutoCAD, we still need a geolocation. So we need XYZ coordinates, and everything is based on the coordinate system. So whether it's a CAD or BIM or next generation, we'll still have the same foundation of using the design. Now, if I relate to how people used to be very specific about CAD because they wanted a precise, which is exactly happening in BIM as well. We are precise, but now the way we work, it changed. So let's say in early days, someone has one mind and one view, or maybe one or two options they can have in CAD, whereas in BIM, we basically use maybe variety of minds, or let's say people, to integrate all of the ideas to make a better design. So it's a cultural shift. So from one man workmanship from CAD is being transferred to BIM, having more collaborative in design. And then now we can also see the industry, the whole AEC industry is embedded within the BIM collaborative environment. So there's definitely a lot of major shift within how we used to work and how we used to think and how we used to collaborate.
Yeah. And when you think about the transition from CAD to BIM to digital engineering, is there any parts of this that from your point of view went wrong? And is there anything you will do differently now? That based on what you know today?
I would say lots. The major changes has been happening in the time. So in the CAD days, we were limited to the tools. So whatever the options they have, we had to basically use it. So your designer perspective or your creativity was compromised within the CAD environments. That's how I look at. So because there was no more tools for the architects to basically enhance their creativity, but they were limited to the tools because of the lack of developments, and of course having lesser software providers. But now if I look at now, because now it's not just the BIM, but of course you got a different ways of making your design in reality, in optioneering, or of course with the help of AI, now you can have a different mix of your design and ideas, and you can get a better products. So there's a change in expectations as well now, because people are becoming more creative. That's how I look at it, because even me, I'm becoming better because of help of an AI.
Yeah, definitely. And when we think about the people that are working in this space, many of them may have the ambition to become BIM leaders or BIM mentors, and maybe they have fantastic technical skills, but there are also probably other skills that are required to become a BIM mentor, right? So in your experience, what are the traits or the single trait that separate a brilliant BIM technician from somebody who actually becomes a BIM mentor that can actually grow a team?
Yeah, so if I look at the BIM technician, they could be really good in technical aspect on problem solving, whether it can be on single project or multiple projects. Whereas the mentor means basically you should be able to mentor others. So as to become a BIM manager, you should have been in the BIM technician role first of all. That means you are technically perfect, not hardly to say perfect, but you said really good in the technical. And then you should be able to also train other people so that without you, they can do their work. So as a BIM mentor, you should be able to transfer your knowledge to others as well, which is a separate skill than being a software specialist for that role.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes these people probably end up trying to unlearn the great skills that they have, which could be a little bit frustrating if you think about it. You spend so much time in your career trying to develop these skills, and now somebody tells you, yeah, but now you have to pass your skills onto others, and also you're not spending much time onto the tools anymore. Do you think, is there anything else that they need to try to, I don't know, maybe unlearn or relax or give up on?
Well, for me, I'm fortunate. Like I mean, I have unlearned my bad skills. That's how I look at. But the good skills, you still keep it up. And also, being a mentor, it does not mean you are losing track of what you used to do, because you still, even though you have a BIM specialist in your company, you're still looking over on top of it, and you should be able to solve the problem they cannot solve. So probably we may not be able to use the tools day by day or every day, but you still have to be on top of it, which is different than what I have in my experience. Now I can say I'm fully utilizing of every knowledge what I have in this my role in this company, which is, I think, is really matching with what the company requires and what my skill sets are. So I'm using my, let's say, 90+% of my skills in my workflow at this stage.
That's good. And we mentioned before you worked in 4 different countries. So you worked in Australia, in Singapore, in Dubai, in Nepal. And yes, I always found fascinating to try to understand if anything changes. Like, is there a different approach to BIM when you work in different countries, or is it still the same? Or what's constant between the different approaches?
Okay, so my timeline when I worked in Nepal, that was back in before 2000. So it was 98 to 2000. That was 2 years, and there was nothing about the BIM. They were just transitioning from drafting board to CAD. That's how my experience is. And then working in Dubai, they were on digital platforms, like they're using AutoCAD, ArchiCAD, or I think Architectural Desktop. There's 3 platforms, and of course MicroStation for other purpose. Now moving to Singapore, that's where the BIM started evolving. So I can give some of my experience working with Singapore and Australia, because most of the time I've spent in Australian in my last 18 years, I have more evolved in space of BIM. So at the early days when in Singapore they started BIM, they were very quick to adapt. That's where I realized, like, a lot of companies, they were on board with BIM, and they really wanted to be on board on BIM, because the Singapore government was going to make that mandatory for a country called the figures, but more than, let's say, $5 million worth of project has to be on BIM, which was not the case in Australia when I moved to Australia. So later, of course, we understand the architects, they were picking up BIM, and they were basically adopting BIM. It's not because of the government mandatory, but because of the efficiency. So in terms of, as I said, the Singapore was fast to adopt because it was making mandatory, whereas Australia was, even if it is not mandatory, they really want to pick up and be more efficiency. So I can see there is a difference in the cultural requirements. So in Singapore, they're more like, has to be done, okay, let's do it. But over here in Australia, it's more on, oh, this is going to make me efficient, let's adapt it. So there is a cultural differences. Now, these days I'm speaking with some of the people in Nepal on the BIM side, and they're gradually progressing with that. And I'm glad, like, I'm involved with one of the organization, which is a non-profit organization for BIM, where I'm being just an advisor, and I can see they are progressively started picking up in the digital transformation.
Is there any cultural lesson that you think Australia should learn from other countries? I know you mentioned that Singapore was very quick to adopt, but is there anything else that you think should be learned, or different countries can learn from each other, from your point of view?
Yeah, it's hard to answer, to be very honest, because there's a big gap now working with Singapore, and there's a huge gap, I can say, because from last 18 years I'm working in Australia, and I just worked for 4 years there. There is definitely a cultural difference in working. Singapore, I can say there was the fast adoption, and it's still, because it's more on because it's a small country and it's very fast to adapt. So in overall country, you can say, oh yeah, they can roll out these in, let's say, 4 years, whereas in Australia it might take 14, for example. So that's the only difference is whereas Australia is also being innovative, but the scale wise there are two different countries. What Australia can learn from Singapore? Well, I think I would be biased if I say something which may not be perfect. But we should learn from Singapore is about the digital adoption and how fast they can adopt.
Yeah, that's great. And you've been testing Autodesk product for 2 decades now. So you must have seen the evolution of the software and how the software evolved between different releases. Have you noticed any patterns that in the evolution of the software that you're like, okay, I see, you kind of like feel like you can predict what's going on next? How was your experience in testing these products for Autodesk?
Yeah, so I started beta testing with Autodesk back in, I think, 2003 or 2004. That's where they started this called beta testing. And they used to be around, roughly around 400 people around the world when they started. That's my knowledge. And I recall I was doing beta testing for Architectural Desktop back in 2003, and there was only hardly 40 people involved around the world. But those days it used to be face-to-face interviews, like, and just using some questionnaire. They used to give us, the options, say, hey, how do you like this feature? This is feature we're going to introduce. And it used to be sometime one-to-one as well. And we used to give feedback on how to do it. And of course, those are exciting for us because being in the industry leading company, I had to basically be on top of it. So that was a really good interest for me to understand what they are doing and how we can give feedbacks from the customer user base to the company so that they can think of the future ideas, for example. Those was the early days. And later Autodesk came up with ideas, something called ideas for particular products. So they have got Revit ideas, AutoCAD ideas, and for every product now they have, which is a platform where anybody can simply go and post what they want to see in the next few releases. So let's say in the simple terms, like it used to be a big voice for me, we used to be big voice for the tester, but now there are majority of people they can be involved in that, which is open source right now. To be honest, like I'm not doing beta testing much right these days because it's I can say we have limited times for sure. So yeah, I have seen the majority. I can in my experience, yeah, they used to align with the user database, but again, it's up to Autodesk how they have done it in the past, which sometimes used to be. I used to be happy, but not much. I mean, these days it's more like we are more on what do you call, the problem solving by ourselves. So we do solve our problems and we have to move on. So I'm not personally focused on ideas these
Would
days.
you recommend to anyone starting this industry to participate into these initiatives as a beta testing, or do you think that the format is not as exciting anymore? So it's probably not. I don't want to say a waste of time, but maybe not the best way to spend time.
No, no, absolutely. Look, I mean, as I said, like I am unable to do that. It's because of my personal time. But as I said, like if someone is interested and want to learn, definitely that's a really good platform. Autodesk has those ideas board, and also they can sign in for beta testing. And I believe like if you are a user, you can basically join the beta testing. So they have some qualification criteria, I'm pretty sure. And once they are qualified, they allow you to basically download the beta version, and then in that platform you can start posting once you do the testing and say, oh, it's not working, or you can send the feedback. So they have set up a really good mechanism on the feedback sessions. So I definitely recommend, if someone wants to be part of the beta testing, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, nice. And yeah, I'm thinking about the people who work in this industry. I often think about all of the tools that we create internally within the businesses, because maybe because certain things are missing, for example. And you've seen so many features, but when you look back and you think about all the features that you've been testing, or the features that maybe you thought was a good idea to build, is there anything that you think, oh, they should have built this, but they haven't done it yet? Is there anything you can think of today?
There are many of them. Okay, so this is in my view. Okay, this is in my experience. Okay, I can't cover the others' view, but I'm just covering in my view, in my experience. When I used to be beta tester, let's say 10 years ago, I did not know much about what is required in the markets. So I was happy I was happy with what I'm getting. But when you started really working in the industry and with a top class company, you realize the requirements are different. So when you started learning, the requirements are different and the software doesn't match your requirement. So what are you looking at? The workarounds, right? So, and this is where when you say workaround, you started looking at different tools, different technologies, and then you started thinking of, okay, I'm going to develop my own plugin and then start working because the actual software does not work. So there's a variety of areas I can think of, like, there's a lot of things is there built in the tools, which we hardly use it because your workflow is different. So every company, and that's where these days, even at FK, we develop our own tools, internal tools, to make things, more productive and better.
Yeah. And in your journey, you've seen many technologies emerge. I don't want to list them all, but like there is virtual reality, augmented reality, drones. Now there is AI, the BIM itself. Like there are so many things that emerged. And when you think about these technologies, which one, from your point of view, are the most overhyped over time that then basically didn't deliver much value versus the ones that have actually maybe quietly transformed the industry while everybody else was distracted thinking about the more louder technologies?
Yeah, as a overhyped, I would say digital twin. So I think I attended one of the sessions back in 2012 or 2013. And that's where they started talking about digital twin. And I look at technology trend, and they were saying within 5 to 10 years, it will be, overtaking the BIM. It never happened. So there is still talks going on about digital twin, but in reality, it may have worked in the manufacturing space, but I'm unsure if there are big success in architectural or in the operating building operating environment, how successful they are. I haven't seen personally as a best use cases. So still there are works going on, but I think it didn't deliver what they're supposed to deliver in 5 to 7 years of time, which is over now. 15 years now they've been talking about. Now, if I look at the something which was not a big thing, with we have talked in the past, but it slowly progressed. What is that? It's the common data environment. So there was lesser, talks going on about CDE, but gradually it's now becoming the cultural shift in how we work. So I think these two technologies are, one is overhyped, where I can say it was underrated, but it's become one of the successful technologies.
Yeah, the digital twin, you're right. It's an interesting one because it feels like the entire industry have been talking about it all the time. It didn't really deliver what expected in construction. And then when you think about new technology, right? So it's one of the challenges is to decide, should I really invest my time and energy to pay attention to this, or I should just politely be curious about this? How do you personally evaluate a new tool or technology to decide, yes, okay, I want to invest my time in this, or maybe this is another digital twin?
At this stage, I think the AI makes lots easier to gather some of the feedbacks if you want to invest on time on something. So before AI, the good source was for me was LinkedIn. Having a good connection in LinkedIn, you see the updates, you see the announcements, but of course you have your own intelligence as a human to pick up which can be overhyped, yes or no. And then based on your experience and based on your profession, you can pick the tools, right? So it, as before, let's say pre-AI days, I used to definitely look at the LinkedIn feedbacks and download a trial, test versus what is required for the company. And if it is not going to save any time, you're spending more time, say no to that. That's a very simple answer. But I think thanks to AI these days, like you can pick up other people's experience, right? And then you can see and you can get some overview, and then you can make a better decision.
Yeah, certainly a great aggregator of data. And you touched this, so you mentioned AI. It's the elephant in the room. Where do you think AI sits at the moment in the current hype cycle? Are we all living a dream, or is this something that will be a real thing for you?
Well, I had an impression that is overhyped. Maybe it could have overhyped when they're saying the job will be lost. Now there won't be any, less creativity or sort of things. But I look at the AI in a positive way because it still enhances your skills and gives you better idea, something which we can never think of. It could have, sometimes I understand there's lots of information spitted from them and it's hard to digest from AI. So I think it is more on how do I use the AI efficiently would be understanding of the prompt. So the more clarity I give it to AI, the better answer I can receive. So it's more on the prompt side, I can say. And I see the AI, I look at the way I want to use it rather than what's there. Right. So, for example, if I'm looking at a particular task and say, "Hey, I'm just looking at an option. Can you give me 5 different options to that?" And I get a 5 different answer, which I can never think of. So I still see it's a valuable. But if I say it may have overhyped, if it is looking at the investing, like in the investment industry, it may have overhyped. But in reality, like if I'm paying something for a subscription, let's say $24 a month, I think it's still valid.
And do you see any value in how AI can help people working like BIM workflows? Like, do you see there is any value in that, or it's just like what we see in ChatGPT? You ask what you just mentioned, right? So you ask a question, you give me five options. Or is there actually value today that you can see in the BIM workflows?
Well, absolutely. There are lots of values. There are lots of values for not just in the BIM management, but we are using AI in the design presentations, and also if we have to run any metrics for apartment configurations, we give them the scenarios or the rules, set of rules, and they give us some options very fast. Like it can work it out in seconds or sometimes minutes, which will take hours to do that, someone to do that. So definitely there's a value of it. Now in terms of BIM management, I see and we are using it. Basically, we have something called our own agent called BIM execution plan reviewer, right? So actually, some other companies send us the BEP, so we can simply review BEP compared to ours and say where are the the risk factors, what are the differences between two, which I get a quick review, which might take for me to an hour or two to just go through that, and a human can make errors, right? So the AI can give you slightly better ideas on that, and also flag you the risk which I may have not picked it up. So just to ensure, but as I said, I am not relying 100% of AI at all. It's all about having a secondary opinions and see which one can be valid or which can be invalid. And you are the human, you have your own intelligence, and you can pick it up the right options for you. Now, so that's about the BEP reviews. I also sometimes if I get a question, I ask myself, do I know well? The answer is no. I do not know everything. So, for example, I give a simple example. Let's say, what are the best practices for grouping in Revit? I know 8 answers, but there are missing 2 answers. And who can answer me? AI. So it makes sense. Like for me, I grade myself like I know some, but I know, I do not know everything. So there should be somewhere you can get answers from, and AI can simply answer you some, So if I got 8 right and the 2 was missing, I can understand these 2, which is again adding value to my knowledge skills.
Yeah, and do you think this is going to stay the same, or do you think it's going to change in the future? I'm just wondering if you, of course, it's hard to predict, right? Because we don't know where the evolution of AI will go. But do you feel like there will be some parts of the workflow that will still remain human, and some part that will probably be just completely absorbed by AI?
Yeah, in my perspective, in my the manual work still we do as a BIM manager will be gone. Example would be the BIM coordination, class detections. Those are all will be minimized. I won't say it will be gone. If it still we need human interaction to validate and approve. But at the same time, those things will be gone from the list. The review parts, for example, the creating BIM execution plan, reviewing BIM execution plan, these are all can be automated. So you just need to basically read through, and then you just need to sign it. That's how I look at those things will be gone. I can also see the tools are becoming better in documentation. So when we're doing documentation, we spend a lot of time documenting using a particular software, where those will start automating. In terms of, it's not will be fully automated, but it will be still semi-automated. So you're saving a lot of time. And what still will be relevant to a BIM manager, definitely it's all about the making decisions. And to be able to make better decision, you still need that. The human consciousness will never, stop, right? So we have to be on top of even if AI will answer for us.
Yeah, and when you think about a new BIM manager or somebody starting to prepare now to become a BIM manager, they probably need to prepare, of course, technically, but also intellectually on how to lead a team in this AI augmented production environment. What type of advice would you give to this person trying to navigate this new space?
Yeah, that will be a question for me as well. What's next in next 10 years that will define how we should be starting? Definitely, I can see it has taken, let's say, 10 years for me to experience the tools and technology. They might get in 3 to 4 years time. However, the it's because experience cannot be replaced by technologies for sure. Yeah. So still they need to go through the experience, but of course they will get information easily and they can get a better answer. So they do not need to spend 10 years to become someone who has 10 years of experience in BIM. They might get those learnings in 1 to 2 years time, and they can be better in next 10 years.
Dhanjeet, we are at the end of this episode. This was great. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to connect me. Please connect me on LinkedIn, which I can provide the link to the podcast, and also I may provide the email address. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dhanjeet. It was great to speak to you today. Thank you for joining us on the Digital Construction Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrea. It was a privilege, and it was really interesting meeting with you. And look forward to meet you sometime soon.